everyone, so today I want to talk about Camellia japonica, which, if you are not familiar, it is a relative of Camellia sinensis, which is the plant that is most commonly used to produce your green, black, or white teas, as well as rubios and a couple others as well. But regardless of that, that is the plant that they pull the leaves from because the leaves are caffeinated, so it produces tea. There are actually many different plants that can be used to produce teas like that, but we won't get into that in this video. But we are going to focus on the Camellia japonica because I actually happen to have one of those growing in my front yard just as an ornamental. I would suggest if you have bushes blooming in your yard right about now to go ahead and check that out because mine is a japonica, so it does tend to bloom in early spring usually. So I'll show you the flowers that it produces. Now the flowers on the Camellia species can look vastly different from one to another, so that is just going to depend on whatever variety that you have. So go ahead and check that out and just Google different varieties, Google the traits of the flower that's blooming, and that's a good way to figure out exactly which variety it is, if it is in fact a camellia. Another way to identify is by the leaves. Now, can you see how this has ridges on it? If I can get my camera to focus. There we go. So this is an evergreen shrub and the leaves will stay green all year. So it has the ridges along the edge and then it also has a little bit of veining in the center. The older leaves will be a darker green and the newer leaves will be a much lighter green. And speaking of, so whenever we go to pick the leaves for tea on this, you'll want to pick probably about the first 3 sets of leaves or so. The newest growth is best because when you're picking older leaves for tea, the older they are, the more bitter that they will be. So that's just something to think about. You can use them if you want. It just may not be in your best interest for that reason. And also the longer that they're on the plant, the more bacterial growth that they could have. Now, aside from the leaves, the flowers are actually also edible. So you can take and dry the flowers from your camellia shrub and use those in teas or other cosmetics as well. Some of them will have a scent and some of them won't. My variety, which is the Jupiter variety, just so happens to not have a scent. So I am keeping the flowers from these, and something else that you should definitely know. So do you see the yellow center in mine? If yours is a variety that produces a lot of pollen like that, it's going to probably be in your best interest to not handle that too much or to wear gloves while handling it. So that center part is actually known, or let me say the pollen from that is actually known to cause allergies in a lot of people. And before I realized that, I was like grabbing that a lot and not really paying attention, and it did actually cause my hands to itch a little bit. Okay, so that's not really something that I've had an issue with. Other than that, I would just be careful around the center. I haven't had a reaction with any of the petals or the leaves or any of that. So it could be something that you need to be wary about because some people are more allergic to certain things than others. But from what I understand, it's mostly just the pollen that causes any kind of reaction whatsoever. Now, some of the benefits of the camellia flower are that they are very high in antioxidants and they are also great for weight loss as well as anti-inflammatory. So this is a great one to add to your apothecary. Even if they don't have much of a smell or a flavor, you can definitely combine them with other teas. Alright, so I think that I've talked about it enough, and if you have any other questions, just please let me know because I did a lot more research on it, including the history, which, by the way, they do come from the East and South Asia parts, and it does actually have a traditional meaning over there. So the meaning of the camellia really represents passion, beauty, and grace for the most part in both cultures. So this is also a great addition if you would like to use this for any spiritual work or however you'd like to use this. But this is something that I thought was so interesting, and it actually sparked me on this whole new journey of figuring out what plants in my yard that are, put there for ornamental purposes are actually medicinal or have so many other uses as well. So I would definitely recommend going through your yard and seeing if you have any plants that are have interesting histories, if nothing else. So we will go ahead and move on to processing the tea now. So for the petals, all you need to do is just pull the petals off around the center. And again, you can wear gloves if you want to. I don't have any gloves on me, so I'm just going to be careful and try not to get the pollen on my hands again. So I've already done this process once, and I've dried the petals. This was about 3 days ago, and I just wanted to be sure that they're completely dry before putting a completely covered surface on here. So for now, I just have a coffee filter and a ring on here just to make sure that it's dry. I'll probably only leave it for another day or two because I don't want them to get too crispy. But here is the finished result. You can see they kept their pigment so well. But whenever you're drying the petals, you just want to be sure that they are completely crispy and that they are not able to bend and that they're not pliable, because if you go and seal that into a jar, they're going to be moldy, and then you're going to be very upset because you've wasted a little bit of time and your resources. So the petals are easy. You just pull those off and then separate the petals. And then for the leaves, when you go to cut these off of the bush, I did want to mention there are a few different ways that you can do this. So right now mine is actually going into bloom, so there are buds all over it. So I don't necessarily want to go and cut anything that's not blooming. So you could just cut ends off for flowers that are already blooming and get the newest leaves. Or you can go through and pull off the leaves on the end where it is budding. I'll insert a video clip of where I did that. And then once your flower comes off, if you'd like to keep that, you can just go back through later and trim the bush as a whole. But other than that, whenever it goes into its new growth after bloom, you can just trim the end of the bush and get those newest growth shoots. So I will say that the growth on mine is a little bit old, so we'll see how this round goes. These were definitely a much lighter green than the rest of the bush, so I'm hoping to have great success. I haven't actually tried the leaves just yet, so we will be moving on to that, and it is actually a pretty simple process to make teas. And by the way, I did just want to mention that there might be some confusion with some people thinking that the Camellia sinensis is the only one that you can use for tea, because as I was looking into this, there was actually not a ton of information on camellias in general as far as tea goes. So it is something to think about whenever you're looking into plants that are traditionally sold as ornamentals. If you just type in that variety, it's going to give you all of the ornamental information. So what I recommend that you do when you're searching a variety is to search the variety and then medicinal benefits or spiritual information, whatever. And that'll give you a more directive path. And then you can, just make sure that you cross-check all of your references as well. Don't just go through one, because if one person is just saying something, it might not be right. I am actually just going mostly off of information that I find off of the internet. So what I do is just check over as many sources as I can possibly find to make sure that I'm doing something safely, and also make sure when you are checking for your plants that you're really making sure that you have identified that correctly. You can use things like plant identifier apps to help you with that too. All right, so we will go ahead. Oh, by the way, for the Camellia japonica, the reason why it's not, commonly advertised as a tea plant is because the sinensis, they were just bred to do it over generations. With the japonica, what I could find is they may have a more variable caffeine content, and they can also be more astringent in flavor. So whenever you make a tea into a black tea or process it more, it will mellow out the astringency. So that should be fine anyway. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the process of the leaves. another thing, so the flower buds or the seed pods of the Japonica variety, so they're often used and pressed for the seed oil to produce a lot of cosmetics. So it's very popular for hair growth in places like Japan. I'm gonna go wash these leaves real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've washed my leaves. All I did was just let these sit in vinegar water for a couple of minutes, very hot vinegar water. You can actually blanch these for a few seconds if you'd like to, not very long at all, because you don't want to boil everything out. But all you're going to do is just clean them really, really well. And now we are going to begin rolling the leaves. So I'll show you how to do that. So you just want to grab a leaf and then you're just literally going to roll it just like this. And it may break a bit, that's okay. You're just going to you want to expose as much of the inside as possible to air so that it can allow it to oxidize. You can certainly grab handfuls of leaves and it does actually make it a little bit easier on you. So right now I've got like 4 or 5 leaves because they will actually roll into each other a little bit before breaking up. So these are the chunks that I'm getting when I'm rolling them in handfuls. So they're holding up a lot better when they're rolled with other leaves, but when they're rolled singularly, they break up a lot more. Smells green. Okay, so here is my bowl of rolled leaves. I'm just gonna actually sit these. We cover these with a paper towel. I have seen different things saying, like I said before, from a few hours to like a few days. I'm just going to let it sit for 4 hours, and I'm going to come back and bake it to stop the oxidation process. Okay, so I will see you back when it's time. Okay, so these leaves have baked for approximately an hour now. I definitely did not think it was going to take this long, but the smell started changing, and then at about 40 minutes, it became a very sweet smell. And then they started getting more and more dry over the course, and then finally now at about close to an hour, all of the leaves are very crunchy. So you just want to make sure that they are fully dehydrated when you pull them out of the oven. But you don't want to bake them too long at too high of a heat because you don't want to burn them either. Okay, so now that they're done, we're going to go ahead and brew up a cup of tea, and we'll see what that looks and tastes like. So I'm just going to let this steep for a minute and see how it turns out. Definitely not an ideal way to steep your tea. I do have a strainer, but I'm just kind of winging it on this because I want to see how this turns out. Okay, it's been about 6 minutes now, so I'm just gonna pour the liquid off of the leaves here and give you a look at what it looks like. So oxidizing it at about 4 hours is going to produce a nice green tea. And of course you can put more leaves to brew it stronger. And matcha is also made out of green tea. So I haven't went down that rabbit hole, but I'm pretty interested to see what it will take to make matcha powder as well. And then as for black tea, it appears that it needs to be oxidized for a much longer period than 4 hours. So that one has yet to be figured out, but it is next up. And as for the taste, it literally tastes like green tea. No, it's pretty good though. It is said that the Camellia Japonica can produce a bit of like a floral taste in the tea, and I could definitely see that. But yeah, these are really good. I usually don't actually drink green tea, and I don't know if it's just the fact that this is something that I went through the process of making myself, but I actually don't mind drinking this by itself. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, or if this is just like a placebo and it makes me like it now, but anyway. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this video was helpful. Bye!